The recording. And here we go. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Welcome to another episode of Minimum Effort, Maximum Shank, where we are going to shamelessly give you all of the best strategies and tactics to achieve the most benefit for you and your loved ones with the absolute least amount of effort, which is of course just natural for us humans because humanity is really about leverage, language, tools, cooperation. So we're just here to make your life way easier. I have my close friend here, Victoria, who also works at Ambition Athletics. And I am very excited to talk about a wide variety of topics, but I think primarily about behavior patterns, a little bit about addiction, and just how people can stop messing themselves up. So thank you for joining me, Victoria.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited.
Me too.
Fun. Where do we start?
Well, you tell me, like, what's the number one thing people are doing that holds them back from the life that they want, in your opinion?
In a nutshell? Wow. Okay. I think the number one thing that holds people back is the search of perfectionism and external validation from either friends, employers, whoever it is, lovers, input from other people to nourish your soul, when we should be looking, it sounds so very cliche, but we should be looking within ourselves to nourish ourselves and to feel good about ourselves, not externally, but we're programmed by society that it's all about what other people think. And at the end of the day, it isn't about what other people think.
You know, the only person you have to live with is you, ultimately. And yet, we're conditioned from a very young age. You got an A, this means you're good. You did this thing, this means you're good. And since all volitional beings live to pursue profit, which comes in the form of both physical energy and also psychic energy, right? So people don't just want to make sure they have enough food and safety. Everybody's looking for love, right? And people believe that the only way to be loved is if they have visible stomach muscles or, perfect skin, or, in the case of a guy, I know we talked about this a bunch yesterday because we just have some insane conversations, but the balancing act where guys typically go to build big muscles, buy nice cars and big houses to attract a mate. And then women, on the other hand, the culture has kind of gravitated mostly toward being like a very beautiful ornament, right? Being a very beautiful object, being a little bit submissive, I would say. And I'm sure there's some natural piece of that component just within the male-female dynamic. I think it's really interesting that in basically every other animal on Earth, it's the male who's the brightly colored slut versus
the peacock spiders. I watched that.
How funny was that? The peacock
spider. He was fabulous. But what about the one that got eaten?
That was terrific, wasn't it?
I was horrified.
So let's explain for the people who are going to listen to this. The peacock spider has this literally like a piece of its abdomen that it flips up like a big sign behind it. Like you can see this big yin and yang symbol that gives me more power during our conversation. And then it does a little dance. The male peacock spider does a little dance with his peacock thing and then also taps out a beat.
Was it his rumba drum or something they called it?
Yeah. So he's doing a song and a dance, basically. He's creating a little vibration. He's doing a song and a dance. He's got this pretty peacock thing. They're really brightly colored, like fluorescent, all kinds of crazy things, holding up two legs up like it's one of the most insane things. You got to look up the peacock spider. So what's interesting about that is the stakes of this dance going well are very, very high because the female peacock spider is larger, rather drab colored, just kind of like a normal chocolate brown color, I would say. And if the dance goes well, the female peacock spider will allow, keyword there, the male to mate with her. And if she doesn't like the dance, she will kill and eat it. Now, those are pretty darn high stakes. Can you imagine going to the bar and you've got like a 50-50 chance that you're going to get laid or get
killed and eaten? I didn't actually think he was quite dead either when she started eating him, so he was probably being moderately eaten alive.
Yeah, and who knows how much it seems worse, doesn't it? Although I haven't experienced that myself. But anyway, to consider how different it is in the animal kingdom than what we've created with culture and society, right? So I think that's one of the difficulties that people have is the animal vessel that we have is put into an environment that feels very, very unnatural, right? And I think that's a big part of what creates that disconnect between what feels intrinsically good in our own souls versus what we believe will make people love us. Because once again, circling it back, everything we're doing to gain energy, whether that's psychic energy or actual energy like money, food, wealth, whatever.
But if you think about it, ultimately the peacock spider is seeking validation from the female.
Well, he's definitely making an offer.
I don't know. It's interesting that something about human beings that when we get rejected, obviously the rejection in the spider world is that you get eaten and you die. But rejection in the human world is you get rejected and you go home and you cry, right?
Well, maybe, because if you get rejected as a human, it can either erode your confidence or not affect your confidence. And actually, I think, I'm not religious, but one of the more effective religions, not saying like the right one or anything, is Mormonism, because you have to go on this 2-year mission going door to door, trying to essentially sell people on the idea of Mormonism. And there are two really huge advantages to this. Number one, they may grow their community. And number two, they will get very comfortable with being rejected. Right. And one of the most important qualities a person can have is resilience to psychic rejection, because it doesn't actually damage you to be rejected. And, the truth is, when I was in my teens and early 20s, I had like almost no confidence. Just the thought of asking a girl out and having her say no, like, gave me fear. And as I got older, I started realizing that it was more of a numbers game than anything else. And it has nothing to do with me if another person is not interested. It just has everything to do with them. And it's like what we were talking about with art. Art is very subjective. An artist shouldn't be upset that a few people dislike the art and a few people like the art, but the only thing you can do that's really useful is to keep expressing yourself. And so when I realized that, things changed dramatically. You know, it's much more about having the presence of mind to realize that you expressing yourself authentically will attract the right people that you want, because the last thing you want is to please everybody, because number one, you don't want to hang out with everybody anyway. You're going to have your own idea of what kind of people you want to hang out with. And so,
Right.
here's an example, like you and I and the crew at the gym. Is raunchy the right word for our sense of humor? Degenerate, perhaps? I mean, it's foul. We have foul mouths. We make horrible jokes. If some of the things that we've said to each other were recorded, we would be imprisoned for crimes against humanity, most likely, because they're just so obscene. So do you really want to pretend to be a different way so that everyone will like you? No, because then you're just going to stay trapped in that faking, right?
Right. And I think it's okay to put on different, and this is what I'm learning as I get older. I mean, I'm pretty old, but as I'm getting older,
Shut up.
as I'm getting older, I'm learning that it's okay to try on different, or to have to behave a certain way in a certain environment. For example, I can behave and joke a certain way with you guys. If I was to take that sense of humor out to clients in my daytime job that I do,
right.
It probably wouldn't go down quite as well.
Right.
So I've definitely been experimenting. I guess you would call it using my filter, and knowing my appropriate audience, knowing when I can have that kind of humor, because it is fun to me. I do like to have a dark sense of humor.
Yeah.
When it's appropriate, when it isn't appropriate. And
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
You know what I think is great about it is what we're talking about actually leads us to the core of effective and compassionate communication. Because when you talk to somebody else, you have to consider the audience. And, you know, I've done a lot of marketing and advertising online, and the same message, the same exact message delivered to two different people will have the opposite effect. You know, a message can absolutely horrify one person and completely endear you to another person. And
right.
If your goal is to communicate effectively with someone, it's not faking to tailor the message so that the person you're speaking to has the maximum chance of resonating with that message. So, you know, for example, I wouldn't use like an analogy about truck engines with a ballerina. You know what I mean? I would try to, you know, meet her on that same frequency so that whatever the
unless her dad was a truck driver.
Unless her dad was a truck driver. Yeah, exactly. So it really comes down to how well you know your audience when you are delivering a message, and how much you want to tailor your message to resonate maximally versus how much you want to just express yourself exactly the way you see it.
But how many people actually like are, while you were saying that, I was thinking about our souls and how we sell our souls, right? We change, I don't, and I consider myself to be free because of that, but we sell our souls and we change who we are and what we believe in to make money.
Or gain love. Because remember,
or gain love. And what is the cost of what ultimately?
Yourself.
is the cost, it's you.
Yeah, absolutely. People fake for all kinds of reasons, but ultimately they're doing it to gain energy.
Right.
So they're either trying to, so people might fake how they really feel so they can gain professional or monetary success. They might fake how they are so they can get love and get psychic energy from people. And it's very interesting. I mean, I definitely, looking back, hindsight's 2020, of course. Looking back, I was like a chameleon. I was so concerned with people liking me. And I can trace this back all the way at least to high school, if not further. And it's natural too. You gain love, you gain psychic energy from doing certain things. Those behaviors are reinforced, so you want to do them again. And when I was in high school, I didn't have a very core group of friends, but I would go around and I would basically just blend in with whatever group of people was around. So when I was hanging with the kids on the baseball team, I talked like them. You know, we're talking about chicks. When I hung out with the nerds, we're talking about nerd stuff and computer games. And when I hung out with the soccer team, we're talking about like soccer. And, you know, basically you just kind of chameleon yourself and you put out this false avatar of what you think people will like the best. And social media does that, by the way. Social media is self-marketing 24/7. You know, people aren't typically posting people aren't posting 24/7 video of what their day looks like. They're taking snapshots for you, picture or video, and they're showing you this image, they're showing you this symbol, and they're saying, please like this. And in fact, that's exactly what it is, because those are the mechanics involved. You know, you get that little heart and it feels like psychic energy, but really it's just a pacifier. It's a very temporary, fleeting sensation. It's like,
shallow.
well, and it's like taking a drug, right? Because you don't really gain any long-term benefit from it, although you could argue
it just leaves you wanting more.
It leaves you wanting more, exactly. And that's that can kind of lead us into the concept of fasting from those things. Now, I took about 2 years off of social media. Not quite that long. I think it was like 20 months or something like that. And I was on there every single day. And I was putting out really valuable content. I was doing 5-minute flows, promoting Simple Shoulder Solution, Ultimate Athleticism, and the different programs that I run. But it wasn't really my life. And you start to become a little bit attached to the numbers that you see. And that's necessary in business, but I definitely found that stepping away from that and zooming out was very valuable for reconnecting with what myself actually was. Because as soon as that pacifier is gone, like, ooh, I get positive attention for this. Ooh, I get positive attention for this. I'll just keep doing this thing so I keep getting positive attention for it. As soon as you take away those pacifiers, spend a little time alone and quiet, it really makes you start to think about, well, why am I doing what I'm doing? And what is the real me actually? Like, what do I care about so much that I would do it if I didn't get any credit? And that is my reorienting statement. I had a conversation with James Clear, who wrote the book Atomic Habits, which is a bestseller. And that was the main place that he and I differed. We agreed pretty much on all the same tactics for implementing habits. Like, you need to have a trigger, habit, a reward. And, you know, there are simple mechanics that are rather Pavlovian that make sense for any animal, including humans. But his idea was that every time you do a habit, it's a vote for the type of person that you want to be. So it's ego reinforcing. And my idea was a little bit different. It was, what would you do if you got no credit for it? what would you still do if you got absolutely no credit for it? And I think that is going to lead you to a much greater level of self-actualization, because you're going to do what you believe is important, independent of how you will seem to other people. Because you can still be, you can have good habits, right? Like exercising. But if the reason you're exercising is specifically so you will be pretty enough for someone to love you, then I think you might be actually pulling yourself further away from authentically expressing yourself.
Right. So his point of view was, let me back up and understand that. His point of view was that people only put habits into place because they reinforce their ego, or?
Oh, no. His concept, and I think it's a reasonable strategy. He said that every action you take, everything you do, is a vote for the type of person that you want to be. So his concept was, you start with the type of person that you want to be, and then you put in the congruent habits for that.
Right.
So that's like a goal of, well, I want to be this, or I want to be a successful entrepreneur. I want to be a shredded athletic beast. Those are destinations.
Yeah. And then what are your whys? Why do you want to be that?
Well, I love asking the 5 whys, because any exercise goal ultimately is for love. In any exercise goal, if you're trying to get bigger arms, flatter stomach, bigger butt, even if you're just trying to get out of pain, it's so you can either be loved or so you can love what you do more. I mean, every desire that somebody has is, they're looking to love themselves enough or to have someone else love them enough. And our culture reinforces these ideas of what makes you enough or not enough, right?
Right.
And we have these measuring sticks. Like, one of the things that is most horrific about school is how early we start grading these poor little kids. I mean, is it fair to measure a boy in 3rd grade to determine what kind of man will be made?
No.
I mean, that's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, and then your child comes home and says, I'm only going to be XYZ tall, and daddy's 6'5", and I'm not going to be 6'5". Therefore, I'm not as good as daddy.
Well, I mean, yeah, maybe we shouldn't go down the road of how destructive school is, but I mean, I failed English, but I also wrote a book that bought my house. So go figure that one.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how we imprint these ideas on children from a very young age to compare and compete rather than collaborate, when in the real world, what are the most important things? The most important things in the real world are being able to cooperate with people, which is like essentially cheating on a test, right?
Right.
And then to be able to have skin in the game. Those are the 2 things that matter the most. If you can interact with people and communicate effectively and simply, and if you are all incentivized in some way.
I want to go back to your list of whys. That intrigue, that the why we do things is, I think, a question that everybody should be asking themselves before they do. Obviously, for not things like, oh, why am I eating breakfast? But maybe, why am I eating the type of breakfast I'm eating? Obviously, there's the things that you don't have to ask yourself why, but when you're actually going to do something, let's say, for example, clean the house, put on makeup, change your dress, cut your hair. Why? Ask yourself why. Why am I doing this?
Those are great questions. I think, I can't remember if it was Sony or Toyota, but as the CEO of one of those, that was his core management technique, was the 5 whys. You just ask why 5 times and it really like reveals a lot. Well, okay, I want to get bumpy stomach muscles that people can see, for example. That's like one of the most common desires, right? People are mentally sick, physically weak, but they're just so desperate to have bumpy stomach muscles that someone can see. Shit, I used to think that was the path to being loved by a woman. Truly, I did. If I had known this whole time that I would have had a way better chance writing poetry and just learning to talk to women, I probably wouldn't have started exercising in the first place. But okay, so you ask yourself, okay, I want bumpy stomach muscles. Why? Well, I want to look good. Well, why? Well, because I want to be attractive to women. Well, why? That's natural. I mean, you want to be loved. So it all comes back to love once again. And you could say, well, why do I believe that that will make me attractive to women? And that's the culture, right? So the culture imprints you with these beliefs.
We're imprinted to believe that the love of another human being will make us whole.
Well, that is a totally different can of worms, but I think we should hone in on it because it ties back to what you said in the very beginning, which is that your happiness is your own, right? You're painting for your own benefit. You're not painting so someone will hopefully like it. And if you're going into your life waiting for someone to come in and make you whole, then you never will be. And actually, all you're giving that person so much power over your life.
You're actually building yourself a cage that you will live in for the rest of your life.
Right.
And constantly look for somebody else to reach through the bars and give you love, support, whatever else you desire from other people. Right. Validation of some kind. Oh, you're so good at that. You look so great, or whatever it is.
So good. Yeah.
You're trapped. You're completely trapped. I have been in that cage, and
you're the only one. No one else has ever gotten caught in that trap.
No, but I don't think people realize that they're in a trap because we're force-fed by the media that's if other people like what you're doing, then you're doing a good job. That's okay.
And, that's also natural, too. If you think about it, it starts very early. You're in a submissive role with your parents to begin. You enter into a second submissive role where you're measured and graded and told that you're good based on your performance in school. And then culture and advertising kind of fills in the rest of the blanks. So by the time you're an adult, which is apparently when you're 18, you're an adult, just this like magic amount of years, and suddenly we think you're capable of making your own decisions. I've met really smart 10-year-olds and I've met really dumb 60-year-olds. Like who can really say where that line is? I understand the human desire to draw a lot of lines, but we are definitely conditioned from a very young age to seek validation. And that goes beyond the society and culture we live in now. Even back when it was more tribal, the worst thing that could happen wasn't to be killed, it was to be exiled. Now, you could argue that point, but that's how bad it was to be exiled from the group. And now, the group that we're in is very vocal to any kind of competing idea. So for example, depending on where you live, like let's say you go to San Francisco or Houston, Texas, right? And you have whatever set of beliefs that you have. And you vocalize those beliefs in both places. Most likely, one of those places is going to support your beliefs, And the other place is going to basically curse you as a witch, essentially, like a heretic of some kind, because it's very tribal, you know, the line's drawn. It's so interesting how distracted people get by like hating people with a different colored t-shirt. Oh, you got a red t-shirt. Oh, you got a blue t-shirt. I don't like you. And it's so odd, but that's really what it is. People are very tribal. We're the most social creatures. We are the most social creatures. We really do feed off of psychic energy, and that's something we need. That's why a baby that is neglected is in a lot of ways worse off than a baby that's just simply malnourished nutritionally. So we have this deep desire for connection and love. And so unfortunately, even though it's highly unnatural, people will fake so they'll be accepted and loved.
And that starts within the family unit.
Big time. I mean,
you pretend to be something that your parents want or show appreciation for. Oh, you're such a good boy, Johnny. You did this X, Y, and Z. Or it blows my mind. It blows my mind how early the trauma can start, and kids learn to fake who they are to gain love from their parents. And then when they grow up and they leave that family unit, they're already in the pattern of pretending to be something they're not to get love. And that's
totally
so sad. It's so sad.
Well, you know, what's the opposite of unconditional love, which is the most beautiful thing in the world, is unconditional love. Conditional love.
Conditional love. And you ask any mother, does she love her child unconditionally? And they'll all say yes. I don't think they're being entirely truthful. Sorry.
I would have to agree with you. I think there's
I'm probably going to get slammed for saying that, but
there's a funny joke. I agree with you, by the way. There's a funny joke that Jim Jeffries did. And he goes, you know, my mom said to me the other day, Jim, I love you unconditionally. And I thought, oh, that's very well and good. But what if I cut one of her tits off? and you go, well, yeah, I mean, there's probably no such thing as like purely unconditional love unless you're really just like a Zen master on the mountaintop. But it is kind of that phrase of forgive them for they know not what they do. And when you realize that pretty much, I would say like 99% of the people alive in our country right now have undergone decades of abuse in their life, emotional, psychological, physical. I mean, being forced to sit in a chair for like 6 to 8 hours a day in a school when you're a young kid is pretty horrific by itself, let alone the fact that you're measuring their ability as a child against every other child to fit into some mold. Like, you know, you
that
take...
was torture for me. Sitting in a chair for that absolutely killed me as a kid. And to keep my mouth shut, not talk, not to express with my peers.
Yep.
I got moved. I started at the front of the class, would talk to the person next to me, got moved. If you talk to that person, I'm going to move you. Sat me next to someone else. I started talking to them, moved me again. Eventually, I got moved to outside of the classroom on a table on my own, and I started talking to the janitor. And the teacher came out and said, basically, where do I have to put you where you're not going to talk to somebody?
Outside of the school, bitch.
And I was like, I don't know what to tell you, lady. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I feel sorry for teachers too, though, because the system is really the problem. I mean, look at the classes. You know, you have all the desks facing the same direction. It's not designed for collaborative expression is designed for obedience training. And
Right.
it's horrific, but you know, the value of knowing this is that you can frame your experience however you like, because I think it's quite a bit more empowering to know that this happened, but also frame it in a constructive way. You can say, yeah, you know what? I did go through 12 years, by the way. What a shit investment that turned out to be. Um, I did go through a deeply traumatic experience, but I don't have to carry that forward with me. I can decide right now, I can reinvent myself any way that I like. And the more you ask why, like we were talking about, the more you separate yourself from these pacifiers, these dopamine hits where you're just craving love and attention, the more mindful you can really navigate your own life the way that you see fit.
The why is an important part, though, because you're talking about trauma and unpleasant experiences. Asking why can be a trap in itself there, because if you are constantly saying, well, why did this happen to me, and why are those people so mean, and keep going over and round and round and round, trying to figure out why it happened.
Yeah. Well,
you're going to suffer endlessly. The why is, why do I want to find my way out of this? Why do I want to not suffer anymore? And how can I do that?
Well, it's natural to want to move toward pleasure and away from pain. Everybody does that. The unique thing about being a human being is that you have the ability to project your thinking very far forward into the future and pretty darn far backward too. And you can do this with much greater skill and accuracy than most animals. And that's a power. And with great power comes great responsibility, as the great Spider-Man once said. And also, you know, the burden of that.
We're back to spiders.
Yeah, the burden, right? The burden of that power can be significant too, right? Because in the future, you can hope and you can plan and you can look forward to, or you can fear. And it's also very natural for us to try to preemptively get away from danger, because that's more effective than just reacting to danger. So it's very natural for people to think of all these probability trees of what's going to happen next, right? And then the past is your ego. The past is your ego, and your ego has told a story about, well, what is Max? You know, the story of Max, and how attached you are to that story is going to limit your ability to change. And that's what people want. People want to change for the better, but the main thing that holds them back is they're afraid to let go of their past ego, whether it's past wounds or past glory. Because either way, if you attach yourself to that story, it's like chaining yourself to a big rock and trying to go forward. You just simply can't. So one of the most critical skills that a human being can possess is the ability to frame their experience. And what's really fascinating, I was talking about this during the morning flow yesterday, and it has to do with vision. So your vision is a huge part of your interpretation of the world around you. 75% of your total awareness is visual. Of that 75%, which is vision, so of your vision, 20% of it is just the raw waves imprinting an image on your retina, and 80% is you relating that information to what you've seen before so you can make sense of it. So what you see is only 20% waves of light, and 80% of that is the processing of that information to relate it to something you've seen before. Like I've seen an iPad before, and I'm looking at you on an iPad right now. So I'm not only seeing that there's like a black border and a rectangular object and there's you on a screen. I'm getting that raw data, but my brain is also organizing that information into something useful based on what I've already seen before. So you're naturally framing your inputs, but then you have an even higher level of framing, which is the framing of your experience. And you can either frame yourself as a victim or a victor. But the reality is that you must decide for yourself what story that you are going to tell, and do it actively and consciously rather than just accept whatever.
Well, that goes back to the external validation, right? If people receive external validation from being a victim,
Mm-hmm.
and they get coddled, or they get what they consider to be positive attention from other people because of their tale of woe. And I'm not for a second saying that it's like ragging on victims and saying, because I I've been a victim of things, and I don't like that word. I don't like the word victim.
The problem is that people get psychic energy from complaining right now. And the only time that's possible is when you're in a time of abundance. When people are actually hungry, no one gives a shit if you're complaining because everybody's hungry, and tough it out, Nancy. But when times are really good, you can get, it's like an energetic free lunch, basically. You know, you can essentially, it's like begging for attention, right? And if you tell a good story and say, oh, this is so sad, this thing that happened to me, you are going to get showered with attention in our culture right now. So you don't have to even create something useful that is profitable for everybody. You are basically operating on a different type of energy transfer. You're actually sending out a negative, let's just call it a wave, a negative frequency, and you're getting back something positive, and you're getting that behavior reinforced. So not only is that just pacifying you and holding you back because you're in a victim role, you're getting enough positive reinforcement from it that you'll keep doing it.
Right.
So that's why you never want to reinforce that behavior for somebody, because all you're doing is you're dooming them to a lifetime of doing that.
There's a super interesting, I was just pulling it up, that's why I was looking down at my phone. There's an interesting paradigm called the victim perpetrator paradigm, and it's a triangle of victim, perpetrator, and rescuer. And
former rescuer, by the way. I don't know if that was up.
Former victim.
Yeah.
Former rescuer. And I'm sure I have been the perpetrator of some acts of, certainly when I go after one of my children for doing something inappropriate or unkind, I become a form of perpetrator. Well, not as in violent crime perpetrator, but chastiser and disciplinarian.
Well, it's interesting to see where the line is between physical violence and verbal violence. I mean, there's a ton of verbal violence going on right now between people over words, written words mostly. You can certainly engage in verbal violence like talking, but people are much less likely to do that because it is so uncomfortable. I mean, if you and I started yelling at each other, I mean, it would be very uncomfortable for both of us and everyone listening, but there's enough of a separation that people feel very comfortable over the internet telling people, oh, you're stupid, you don't know anything, F you, F this, you're the worst. And it's just like, wow, gosh, nothing is neutral. Nothing you do is neutral. Everything, every single thing you do, me too, everybody watching this, every single thing you do has an effect. And you can't know what the total sum of that will be. You can't know how it'll affect the other person, and you don't know how it's going to affect yourself either. Everything you say has an effect on you, the other person, and it has a ripple effect to everything else.
Outside the world, yeah, absolutely. What I've learned in that whole paradigm is that you have to step outside of those roles. And I can get very trapped in being a victim and the woe is me mentality. Ooh, you disappeared.
I'm back.
You're back. But that doesn't help me. If I am stuck in the problem of what has happened to me, I'm never going to find a solution. So I have to step outside of that role of victim and start rolling the wheels of action into what's my solution here? What do I need to do to feel better? I can't do drugs.
You could.
I could.
Yeah.
I don't drink. I don't smoke. So what do I need to do? Taking away all of those things from me, and we're kind of segueing around a little bit, but taking away all of those things from me has made me really look internally as to what I need to do to make myself happy, not what someone else can do to make me happy. And in that action, it's you set yourself free.
Yeah.
You set yourself free from everything.
You stop leaving yourself at the mercy of the reactions of other people, right? And I think it really just comes back to whether you can express yourself. We talk about this a lot, is the difference between depress and express. The reason people feel depressed is they don't have a way to express themselves. They don't write down their thoughts. They don't make art. They don't make music. They don't dance. They don't go for a walk. They don't talk to people about things in a compassionate setting where they can release these feelings. And it's like we were talking about before, the culture is extremely depressive. School alone, I hate to vilify school so much in this conversation, because I actually had a few good PE teachers, but the rest of it was just like totally catastrophic failure, in my opinion. I don't think there's a redeeming quality. I think anybody would look at that 12-year investment and say that it was absolute bollocks.
Right.
And it's very depressive. It doesn't encourage self-expression. So it's no wonder that you get a bunch of sad, obedient adults when that's all said and done. So fortunately, we have free exchange of information over the internet and otherwise. And you do have the ability to reset and to start finding ways to express and to take away those pacifiers. I think
you're not the sum of your past, right? The future's not yet written. That you don't have to be, okay, this is my life up until this moment right here. Do I allow all of that to affect me negatively and either make me, again, the victim, the perpetrator, or the rescuer, or do I allow it to propel me forward into positive action to change and learn from it?
Totally. Yeah, I totally agree. I think that we are mostly beliefs and behaviors. Whatever you believe is true, it's true for you. If you believe the whole world is out to get you, that's probably the life that you're going to experience. If your behaviors are to sit in front of a screen for many hours a day, It's going to become part of your life. You're not going to really be expressing yourself. You're not going to have the energy left over to do other things that you believe are important. So beliefs and behaviors are controllable. I mean, I get messages from people who have been doing a 5-minute flow for 4 straight years. And they say it's been the biggest game changer they've had. And it's only 5 minutes. You know, wiggle your joints and drink a big cup of water. And the difference between doing that and not doing that is vast when you think about it. Because just hydration and movement alone are some of the cornerstone animal needs. And if you're not getting enough hydration, if you're not getting sunshine, if you're not expressing yourself authentically in some way, no wonder you feel depressed. I mean, I think the label of depression is really unfortunate because it's another one of those words like addiction that's very hard to define. You know, there are a lot of reasons that a person would feel sad. The main reason is you're physically broken and you're mentally faking or holding things in. So if you have ways to physically get yourself going, get some sunshine, go for a walk, go for a sprint, play a game, do some wrestling. And if you have the presence of mind to make a consistent practice of, you know, writing down your thoughts and framing your experience on your terms, playing a musical instrument, singing, dancing, drawing, even if you think you suck at it, right? You know, the whole concept of it having to be good is just going right back to that problem of living for the approval of other people's. You know, fit into this mold and they promise to like you, then still die alone, living mostly for their view. It's very true. And this, unfortunately, this is trap number 1, or maybe even trap number 0, because this is the kind of thing that we were talking about yesterday. It can stop you before you even get started. You know, forget about actual problems like, oh, you know, I can't exercise because I got a bum knee or I got a bad back or something like that. What's worse than that? Feeling so mentally defeated that you're not even willing to try. That's worse. You know, bad attitude will, you won't even show up to the race, let alone run.
It's a loss of hope, right? Almost.
Yeah, and that's the tricky thing too, because if you have an expectation and it's not met, that's the only way you can get disappointed. But you must expect that you can in order to try in the first place. So you have to have a healthy relationship with what you're doing. And I think it makes sense for it to be based not necessarily on your achievement, but based on the process. You know, I think if you can focus on what you're doing, whatever that thing is, making a piece of art, doing a dance, playing a musical instrument, writing a book, writing a this, doing whatever, it'll be however good it is.
It'll just be, right?
It'll be however it is. You know, good and bad are judgments we make in our own mind, and they mean absolutely nothing. It's total bollocks. Like who says what's good? Who says what's bad? You know, if you're talking about the marketplace, if someone bought it, it's good enough. If someone didn't buy it, then it's not good enough. Simple as that. But you should attach your feeling of self-worth to some number or to some idea of good and bad. The thing that will really free somebody is to express themselves authentically and to avoid that trap of doing things because of how you will seem to others rather than doing things based on how it feels to do them. And I come right back to that idea of what would you do if you didn't get any of the credit? What would you do anyway if you didn't get any of the credit? And, you know, I hope someone will give me a more effective question than that, but I haven't found anything more effective to help people find out what they really want to do than that question, right?
True integrity is what you do when nobody else is watching. Well, how do you behave when no one else is watching? Are you murdering bunnies in the backyard, or are you being a positive, taking groceries around to your next door neighbor who's disabled, or, you know, doing it because you want to be a good person.
Right.
No one's going to see you do it. And then not posting all over Facebook, oh, I took groceries to my neighbor because I'm such a wonderful person.
Yeah.
That, you basically just ixnayed the being a good person, because you then sought validation from other people. You could encourage other people to do that, but not off the back of, aren't I so wonderful? Look at what I go out and do every day. There's so much ego in the world. And I don't know. I mean, even me right now, I'm being egotistical because I'm saying that I don't have an ego. I do have an ego. Everybody has an ego.
Right. It's an interesting game, you know, like it's kind of like the funny thing. It's like, well, no one has a smaller ego than me. I'm the most humble person on the planet. And it just sounds silly. Yeah, you know, how would we sum this up, Victoria? Because this is really important for people to just take the time, just have some quiet, have some silence, have some space to create. You know, music isn't about the sound, it's about the relationship between silence and sound. It's those spaces in between. Mm-hmm. So I think that if you, number one, just give yourself that silence, that will at least give you a vessel to express yourself into and see where you're coming from. And, you know, just ask why and ask why and ask why, and, you know, see where that takes you. That might be all that somebody needs to do to make a huge difference in their life.
Right. You just made me think of a quote. I'll see if I can find it. I don't know it off by heart. I tend to not memorize things terribly well sometimes. But you talking about the pause and the space between our reaction and our response, taking that time.
Right. Between impulse and action. I have that up on my whiteboard. I've had it up there for a really long time. And that's what makes us human, is the space between impulse and action.
Right.
And one of my favorite books ever is the book Dune. And in the beginning, Paul goes through this, he's a kid, main character, and he goes through this experience where he has to put his hand in a box, and he has a dagger held to his neck that's poisoned.
Right.
All right. And so what happens is the box slowly starts delivering him pain in an increasing amount. And the rule is, if you pull your hand out of the box, I kill you with the poison blade, right? And it's a test to see if he is human, because a human can see the bigger picture beyond impulse, because the impulse is constant. The animal impulse is, oh my God, hot, burning, fire, take my hand out of the box, hot. But the human side of things is like, yes, I really want to take my hand out of this burning box, but I see the big picture, and I know that if I take my hand out of the box, I will die. So you have to be willing to lose.
Short-term goal, long-term goal, right?
It's just being able to see the bigger picture, really. And it's being able to have that mindfulness, to have that space in between impulse and action. And
I found this quote for you. It's by a psychiatrist, Viktor
Victor.
Frankl.
Ah,
Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. In 12-step work, we talk about restraint of pen and tongue. And that, for me, has been huge, right? Taking that moment where you're in a situation with somebody where you may want to attack, either verbally or physically or by written word.
Yeah.
And you stop and you pause and you breathe. And you think about actually what you really want to do. And whether you're responding from ego or victim or whatever it is.
So true.
That has changed. Just restraint of pen and tongue, that expression in itself, and the pause button. Okay, I'm going to pause. And I can pause for 10 seconds, or I can pause for 10 minutes or 10 days. And I come back to it when I'm responding, not reacting.
It's a beautiful thing, Victoria. I think that is a great way to wrap up what we talked about. You know, the idea that no thought, no word, no action, nothing is neutral. That's huge. That's a huge concept. Nothing you do is neutral. Self-talk, nothing is neutral. What you say to others, nothing is neutral. Absolutely nothing is neutral. So if you combine that understanding with the pause, the breathing, and then ask why. Why am I saying? Why do I want to respond to this person in this way? Why? And actually, what am I trying to achieve by this? Do I want them to believe what I believe? Do I want them to hurt because I feel hurt? You know, so I think those are the three things that I take away from this. Nothing is neutral. Pause and breathe. Ask why.
And then respond.
That's beautiful, Victoria. Thank you so much.
I love talking with you, Max. It's fun.
I love talking with you, Victoria. It's so easy, and I think there's hardly anything more valuable than a compassionate conversation with someone that you love and care about, especially in terms of getting your thoughts organized and connecting. And I'm really grateful that we were able to share this with other people as well. And thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Have a wonderful afternoon.
You too. And for those of you listening, be sure to visit maxshank.com and ambitionathletics.com, where you can either work with Victoria or myself at Ambition Athletics or the M3 Academy, or pick up any of the great systems to help you live better with less effort. And that's it. Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Bye.
And